Let's get to it. Number 10. The Pyramid Code. Imagine you were a time traveler. You stand on the scorched sands of Giza in 2500 BC, looking up at a geometric mountain of limestone designed to launch a pharaoh's soul into the stars. Now you blink. You are instantly transported 3,000 years into the future and 7,000 miles across the ocean to the jungles of Central America. You look up. You see the exact same silhouette cutting against the sky. Different people, different language, different era. Yet they are building the exact same resurrection machine. The parallels between the ancient Egyptians and the Mayan and Aztec civilizations are so precise they make historians sweat. We aren't just talking about the shape. A pile of rocks naturally forms a pyramid. That's simple physics. We are talking about the intent. Both cultures aligned these massive structures with surgical precision to the cardinal points and specific constellations, often Orion or the Pleiades. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a degree. Meanwhile, the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan is oriented to mark the passage of the sun from dawn to dusk. Both civilizations used these structures as royal tombs and temples. Both developed complex writing systems, both were obsessed with the immortality of the soul, and both independently developed a calendar system more accurate than the one we use in Europe today. The architectural blueprints are eerily similar, right down to the stepped construction found in Djoser's Pyramid and El Castillo. The standard archaeological explanation is convergent evolution. Basically, when humans need to build high, they build wide bases. When they look at the sky, they map the same stars. It's not a conspiracy, it's just gravity and geometry. But that explanation feels a little too convenient for the spiritual coincidences. Why did both cultures decide that the only way to talk to the gods was to build a stone mountain that mirrored the stars? Number 9. The megalithic puzzle. CC 1400 AD versus CC 20 BC. You were standing at the base of a wall, but this isn't a brick wall. It is a puzzle made of stones the size of small houses. You try to slide a piece of paper between the joints, but you can't. There is no mortar, no glue. Just massive, irregular polygons locked together so tightly they have survived earthquakes that leveled modern concrete buildings. You are in Peru. Or wait, are you in Italy? Or Japan? Or Egypt? The problem is you could be in any of them, and the wall would look exactly the same. This is the megalithic puzzle. At the fortress of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, the Inca moved limestone blocks weighing up to 200 tons. They cut them into irregular, jigsaw puzzle shapes that interlock in 3 dimensions. Across the world, in the Roman ruins of Baalbek, Lebanon, we find the trilithon. Stones weighing 800 tons raised 20 feet into the air. In Egypt's Valley Temple, the granite blocks are fitted with the same complex mortar-free polygonal style found in the Andes. The engineering challenge here is staggering. To move an 800-ton stone today requires specialized hydraulic cranes that take weeks to assemble. The ancients did this without the wheel, without iron tools, and without modern mathematics. Yet the specific aesthetic style, the puffy-faced stones, the nubs left on the bottom, the metal clamps to use to hold them internally, appears globally, separated by oceans and millennia. Skeptics argue that with unlimited manpower and centuries of time, you can achieve anything. Pounding stone on stone is slow, but it works. The polygonal shape is actually great for earthquake resistance, which explains why different cultures adopted it. But manpower doesn't explain the methodology. If these cultures never met, why did they all decide to solve the problem of heavy lifting in the exact same impossible way?
Number 8. The Mystery of the God's Handbag, c. 9600 BC. Walk through a museum of ancient art and you'll notice something odd. A figure carved into a pillar in Turkey 12,000 years ago. A relief of a winged genie in ancient Assyria. A massive stone monument from the Olmecs in Mexico. They are all gods, or at least powerful beings. They are all distinct in style and dress. But look at their hands. They are all holding the exact same accessory. It looks like a designer purse, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is the mystery of the God's Handbag. At Göbekli Tepe, the oldest temple on Earth, Pillar 43 clearly depicts 3 handbags sitting along the top row. Fast forward thousands of years to ancient Mesopotamia, and the Apkallu, the 7 sages, are carved holding a pine cone in one hand and this square-bottomed, arched-handled bag in the other. Cross the Atlantic to the Levanto site in Mexico, and you find the Olmec Monument 19 depicting a figure holding the identical object. Even the Maori of New Zealand have myths involving baskets of knowledge brought down from the heavens. The shape is consistent, a flat bottom, a curved-handled top, held casually by the most powerful entities in the pantheon. It appears in cultures that, according to our timeline of history, had absolutely no business speaking to one another. Historians suggest these are situla, ritual buckets for carrying holy water or seeds, symbolizing fertility in agriculture. It's a container, the most basic human tool. But the uniformity is haunting. If it's just a bucket, why does every god hold it like a badge of office? It looks less like a basket of seeds and more like a piece of technology they didn't want to leave behind. Number 7. The Global Flood Myth, c. 10,000 BC. Close your eyes and picture the end of the world. Not a nuclear war or a zombie plague, but water. A wall of water so high it swallows the mountains. A storm that drowns the cries of humanity, leaving only silence and a vast flat ocean. This is the oldest nightmare of our species. And the terrifying part isn't that it's a story we tell. It's that every single one of our ancestors, no matter where they lived, told the exact same lie. Or was it a lie? The Great Flood is the most ubiquitous myth in human history. We all know Noah and his ark from the Hebrew Bible, but centuries before Genesis was written, the Sumerians wrote the Epic of Gilgamesh, where a man named Utnapishtim is warned by a god to build a giant boat to escape a flood sent to destroy mankind. In India, the Matsya Purana tells of Manu, the first man, who is warned by a fish to build a ship to survive a deluge. The Aztecs, the Mayans, and the Inca all had flood legends involving a select few survivors. The Gunyu myth in China describes a great flood that lasted for 2 generations. The indigenous tribes of North America, the Aboriginal Australians, and the Vikings all have their own version. The details, sending out birds to find land, the boat resting on a mountain peak, are suspiciously consistent across isolated continents. Historians suggest these are local floods. But if these were local floods, why is the narrative arc identical? It suggests that at one point, humanity wasn't scattered, we were all standing together watching the water rise.
Number 6. The elongated skull practice, circa 800 BC. We are hardwired to modify our bodies. We get tattoos, we pierce our ears, we lift weights. But imagine looking at your newborn child and deciding that their head is the wrong shape. Imagine binding their skull with wooden boards and tight cloth day after day, year after year, forcing the bone to grow upward into an elongated cone. This wasn't torture, it was the ultimate status symbol. The question is, who were they trying to look like? This is the phenomenon of artificial cranial deformation. The most famous examples come from the Paracas culture on the coast of Peru, dating back 3,000 years. Their skulls are incredibly elongated, some with cranial volumes larger than the average modern human. But they weren't the only ones. The Huns, who swept across Europe, practiced this. The Chinook tribes of North America did it. The Mangbetu people of the Congo did it. Ancient Egyptian depictions of Akhenaten and his family show similarly distended skulls. We are talking about diverse cultures, separated by vast oceans and unrelated languages, all deciding that the elite human form, the shape of royalty and divinity, was a long, cylindrical head. It is a painful, dangerous, and long-term process that requires total cultural commitment. Anthropologists explain this as a marker of group identity, a way to separate the nobility from the peasants. It makes you look taller, more imposing. It's fashion, just taken to an extreme. But why that specific shape?
Why did kings and queens across the globe conclude that to look like a god, you had to look like, well, that? Number 5. The universal serpent god, circa 1200 BC. In the animal kingdom, the snake is the enemy. It is venomous, silent, and deadly. Primates are evolutionarily programmed to fear it. Yet, if you look at the pantheons of the ancient world, the serpent isn't a villain. It is the supreme teacher. It is the bringer of civilization. Why did our ancestors worship the one thing that should have made them run for the hills? The universal serpent is everywhere. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl to the Aztecs, Kukulkan to the Mayans, was the deity who brought wind, rain, and knowledge to humanity. In ancient Egypt, the uraeus cobra sat on the brow of the pharaoh, symbolizing divine authority, and the goddess Wadjet. In India, the Nagas are semi-divine serpent beings that guard treasure and knowledge. In the Garden of Eden, the serpent is the one who offers the fruit of the tree of knowledge. The symbol of medicine we use today, the rod of Asclepius, is a snake wrapped around a staff. In ancient China, Nuhua and Fuhi, the creators of mankind, are depicted with human upper bodies and intertwined serpent tails, nearly identical to the structure of DNA. Scholars say the snake represents rebirth because it sheds its skin. It lives in the earth close to the underworld, making it a natural bridge between life and death. It's a potent metaphor. But the specific recurrence of the flying serpent or feathered serpent is odd. Snakes don't fly. So what exactly were our ancestors looking at in the sky that they described as a dragon?
Number 4. The pinecone symbolism, circa 850 BC. Take a walk through the Vatican. You'll see statues of saints, crucifixes, and a giant bronze pinecone, 4 meters high. It's the largest pinecone statue in the world. It seems like a random choice of decor for the seat of Christendom. But then you look at the staff of the Egyptian god Osiris. There's a pinecone on top. You look at the carvings of the Sumerian gods. They are holding pine cones. Why is this humble seed pod the secret handshake of the ancient elite? The pine cone is one of the most mysterious recurring symbols in art history. In Assyrian carvings, the winged genies point a pine cone at the tree of life, as if using it to fertilize or unlock power. The Greek god Dionysus carried a staff topped with a pine cone. The Hindu deities are often depicted with a pine cone-like hairstyle or holding similar objects. The link here is biological. The pine cone is an ancient symbol of human enlightenment because it represents the pineal gland, a tiny pine cone-shaped organ in the center of our human brain. The ancients called it the third eye. The French philosopher Descartes called it the seat of the soul. Skeptics argue it's just a symbol of regeneration. Pine trees are evergreens. They don't die in winter. The cone holds seeds. It represents life. It's simple nature worship. But how did ancient cultures, without microscopes or modern anatomy, know that there was a tiny gland in the center of our brain that looked exactly like a pine cone, and that this gland was linked to our perception of light? Number 3. The worldwide swastika, circa 10,000 BC. I need you to erase the last 80 years of history from your mind. Forget the Nazis, forget the hate. If you go back 3,000 years, the swastika was not a symbol of evil. It was the most positive, universal symbol of good fortune on the planet. You could walk from Greece to India to Arizona, and you would see this spinning cross, carved into temples, woven into baskets, and painted on shields. The word swastika comes from Sanskrit, meaning conducive to well-being. In Hinduism and Buddhism, it has been a sacred symbol for millennia, representing the eternal cycle of birth and rebirth. But it's not just Asian. We find the swastika on ancient Greek pottery from 700 BC. We find it in the mosaic floors of ancient Roman villas. We find it in the whirling log symbol of the Navajo people in North America. We find it on Celtic artifacts, and even on artifacts from the Bronze Age in Europe.
It is a solar symbol, often representing the sun's path across the sky or the rotation of the Big Dipper around the North Star. It appears in cultures that had no contact with the Vedic traditions of India, yet they used the exact same geometric logic. Geometrists will tell you it's a simple pattern. If you try to weave a basket, you naturally create this shape. It's a cross with moving arms. It's easy to draw. But the fact that it always means good luck, life, or sun suggests it's not just a doodle. It's a shared memory of a celestial clock that everyone was watching. Number 2. The terrifying practice of trepanation, circa 6500 BC. You have a migraine, a bad one. You go to the doctor. He tells you the only way to let the demons out is to take a sharp stone and scrape a hole in your skull until he exposes your brain. You were awake for this. And the craziest part? You survive. You live for another 20 years. This sounds like a horror movie, but for thousands of years, this was the cutting edge of medical science. This is trepanation, the oldest surgical procedure in the world. We have found trepan skulls in Neolithic France dating back to 6500 BC. We find them in ancient Greece, but the practice reached its zenith in Peru, where archaeologists have found hundreds of skulls with perfectly healed surgical holes. The survival rate in the Inca Empire was shockingly high, up to 80 to 90% in later periods. The bone regrowth proves these patients lived for years after the surgery. We find similar skulls in Russia, China, and North Africa. These cultures use different tools: obsidian, flint, bronze, but the procedure and the anatomical knowledge required to avoid killing the patient were identical. Medical historians say this was likely used to treat head trauma, relieving pressure from a skull fracture. It's practical. It works. But how did a shaman in the Peruvian Andes and a doctor in ancient France figure out the exact same sterilizing and surgical techniques to breach the human skull without causing fatal infection? It suggests a medical manual that was shared, then lost. Number 1. The staff god figure, circa 9600 BC. There is a pose, a stance of power. Once you recognize it, you will see it everywhere. A figure standing front and center, knees slightly bent, elbows out, and in each hand clutched tight a staff or a serpent. It is the posture of the master of animals. It is the icon of the one who controls the chaos, and it seems to be the one image that the ancient world simply could not forget. In the Andes, this is the staff god. The most famous example is Viracocha, carved into the gate of the sun at Tiwanaku in Bolivia. He stands frontally, holding two staffs, surrounded by winged figures. This motif dominates the Chavin and Wari cultures. Now, travel 12,000 years back in time to Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. On Pillar 56, we see a nearly identical figure, squatting, frontal, holding a staff-like object in each hand. We see echoes of this in the Master of Animals motif in ancient Mesopotamia and Greece. The composition is rigid and specific. It is not a casual drawing. It is a specific iconographic blueprint that survived the end of the Ice Age and reappeared on the other side of the world. Art historians call this symmetry. Symmetrical figures look powerful and stable. Humans have two hands. Putting a weapon in each is a natural display of strength. It's just good design. But the staff god isn't just a design. It feels like a portrait of a figure so influential that 12,000 years later, we are still carving his statue, even if we've forgotten his name. Let's be real. Most people walk through a museum, look at these artifacts, and see nothing but dusty rocks. They accept the textbook coincidence and move on. But the fact that you watched this far means your brain is wired to see the glitches in the matrix. You don't just consume content, you analyze evidence. You understand that history is a puzzle, and you're here because you suspect we're missing the box with the picture on it. This channel isn't just mine, it is the headquarters for the people who refuse to stop asking why. This is your excavation site. So make your membership official. Hit subscribe and lock in your access to the archive. We need minds like yours in the tank. Now, I want to see that mind at work. Go to the comments and pick the one number from this list that you think is the smoking gun, the one piece of evidence that is impossible to explain away. Defend your choice. Convince the rest of us. Let's see who can build the strongest case. The floor is yours.